Somewhere along a windswept Wyoming highway, where the grass bends but never breaks, a lone chestnut Mustang stands like a ghost tethered to memory. His coat, dusted by sun and storms, shimmers copper beneath the open sky, and a white star, bold and perfectly shaped, marks his forehead, a beacon you could spot from a mile away if you happened to look up from your phone or your worries long enough. But not many do. People speed past, distracted by playlists and deadlines, barely noticing the shape against the fence line. But some do. The locals call him Monarch, and they say he's waited by that stretch of road for a decade, never straying more than a few yards from the same patch of battered sagebrush, never accepting handouts, always watching, as if hoping to see a face that's long gone. Clara Jennings isn't from here. She's a documentary filmmaker, sharp-eyed and sharp-edged. But these days, she's burned out. A husk, really, driving across the country with her 13-year-old son, Leo, in the passenger seat, searching for something she can't name. Her husband's death, months ago, left her with too many silences and a son who barely speaks. And now she finds herself chasing stories not for the thrill, but for the hope that something, anything, will make the ache in her chest subside. On this particular afternoon, the wind is so strong it rocks their rented sedan, and the sky looms vast and unforgiving. The kind of place, Clara thinks, where even ghosts would feel exposed. It's Leo who first sees Monarch. Mom, look. His voice is soft, almost surprised, as if he half expected the horse to vanish the moment he blinked. Clara follows his gaze and slows down, unsure why, her heart thudding. The horse stands perfectly still, head high, tail flicking lazily against the wind, eyes fixed on something only he can see. Clara pulls the car over without thinking, gravel crunching under the tires, and reaches for her camera out of habit. For a long moment, mother and son sit in silence, engine ticking, windows fogging slightly from their breath. Clara lifts her phone and starts recording, unable to look away. Monarch doesn't flinch. Instead, he seems to look right through the lens, right through her, as if challenging her to ask the question no one else has bothered to. Clara, for reasons she can't explain, whispers, "Why are you still here?" Her words hang in the air, carried off by the wind. A pickup rumbles past, horn blaring, but Monarch never moves. He's rooted, proud, and solitary. Clara zooms in, noticing every detail. The old scar above his knee, the way his ears twitch at the sound of a distant thunder, the flecks of gray in his mane that hint at his age. She's filmed horses before, but none like this. Not one that seemed to hold the past as tightly as Monarch does. She gets out, camera in hand, and Leo follows, staying close. The road is empty now. Just them, the horse, and the endless sweep of prairie. Clara steps closer, boots crunching through brittle grass. Monarch lifts his head a fraction, nostrils flaring, but he doesn't spook or run. There's a dignity in his stillness, a patience that feels ancient, untouchable. Leo whispers, "Do you think he's waiting for someone?" Clara hesitates. She wants to give a simple answer to reassure her son, but she can't. Not here. Not with the wind tugging at her jacket and the horse staring through her as if he knows every secret she keeps. Instead, she kneels, careful and slow, holding the camera low. Monarch's eyes track her, dark and steady. "Some horses run from the wind," Clara murmurs, voice barely above a breath, as if saying it out loud might change something. This one is waiting for something. She doesn't know if Leo hears her, but she sees the way his shoulders relax just a little. It's the first time in months she's noticed any sign of curiosity, any flicker of engagement. Clara snaps a few more shots, heart pounding not from fear, but from a kind of awe. There's a story here, she realizes, a story bigger than a horse by the road. They stay longer than they intend, watching as Monarch shifts his weight, the wind tossing his mane into wild shapes. Shadows grow long across the highway, and Leo finally tugs at her sleeve. "Can we come back tomorrow?" he asks, voice barely above the wind. The question surprises Clara. For months, Leo has resisted everything: school, conversation, even the things he used to love. But here, in the presence of this silent, steadfast horse, something shifts. Clara nods, feeling the first spark of hope she's had in a long, long time. As they climb back into the car, Clara glances one last time at Monarch. The Mustang hasn't moved, his eyes never leaving the horizon. She hits record one last time, her voice steady but tinged with wonder. Some stories stand still until someone finally listens. The engine roars to life, gravel spins behind them, but in the rearview mirror, Monarch remains, still, patient, undefeated by time. What Clara doesn't know, not yet, is that this small detour will become the axis around which her world will turn. That Monarch's vigil is not just a mystery to solve, but a lesson waiting to be learned, and that sometimes, in the loneliest places, loyalty endures long enough to change not just one life, but many. The next morning, the air in the little Wyoming town is sharper than Clara expected, bracing, almost medicinal, with the faint tang of sage and distant rain. The sky stretches wide and pale, the kind of blue that makes even grown-ups feel small. Clara and Leo wake in the kind of faded roadside motel where the neon sign flickers at odd hours and the thin walls carry the murmurs of strangers. She lies awake for a moment, staring at the ceiling fan as it spins, listening to the steady rhythm of Leo's breathing in the next bed. Her mind loops back to Monarch, the horse by the road, the way his presence haunted the last hours of yesterday. His silhouette lingering in her camera roll and her thoughts. She's not sure why she lets Leo persuade her to stay another day. She'd always been the decisive one in the family, the planner, the problem solver. But this time, it's Leo's quiet insistence that makes her pause, that gentle, "Can we stay just a little longer?" He says it again at breakfast, staring down at a bowl of cereal gone soggy, eyes fixed on nothing and everything at once. There's a gentleness in his request that catches her off guard, a longing she recognizes because she feels it too, gnawing in her chest. They check out of their room, only to check right back in. The clerk, a gray-haired woman named Patty, doesn't seem surprised. "People get stuck in this town all the time," she says with a knowing smile, sliding the keys across the desk. Clara offers a half-hearted laugh, but there's something unsettling about how easily she accepts this sudden shift in plans. She calls her producer, invents an excuse about car trouble and spotty service, but inside she knows the truth. She's not ready to leave, not yet. The hours pass slowly, stretched thin by the monotony of small-town life. Clara finds herself drifting between two worlds, the sterile, familiar comfort of the motel, and the unpredictable, wild energy that seems to swirl around Monarch's stretch of road. She tries to read, to answer emails, to distract herself with work, but her thoughts circle back to that horse, to the mystery of his waiting, to the story he seems to carry in the lines of his back, in the solemn steadiness of his gaze. By midday, she can't resist any longer. She grabs her camera, calls for Leo, and together they drive the short distance to Monarch's place. The sun is high now, painting the grass in shades of gold and green, and Monarch is right where they left him. His silhouette is sharp against the horizon, unmoving, as if the world might change around him, but he will remain. Patient, steadfast, a sentinel in a landscape that's always in motion. They park on the shoulder and walk closer this time. Clara films quietly, careful not to spook him, letting the camera roll even when there's nothing obvious to capture. She finds herself narrating almost unconsciously, her voice soft and even. Some say the wild horses of the West are living relics, ghosts from another time. But sometimes the things that haunt us are flesh and blood, living and breathing, standing right in front of us. Leo hangs back, hands stuffed in his hoodie, eyes darting from Monarch to the distant ridges and back. Clara wants to press him, to ask what he's thinking, but she knows better. Instead, she lets the silence settle, lets the moment breathe. Eventually, Leo inches closer, his movements careful, almost reverent. He crouches in the grass, watching Monarch the way a child might watch a rare bird, hopeful but wary, ready for the magic to vanish at any second. Clara glances at her son, noticing for the first time how much he's grown in the past year. Grief has a way of stretching people, she thinks, making them older and smaller at the same time. Leo's face is thinner, his eyes more guarded, but here, in this strange place, he seems to come alive in a way she hasn't seen since before the accident. He studies Monarch with the intensity of someone trying to decode a language only animals speak. They spend the afternoon that way, watching, waiting, recording moments that seem insignificant until they're viewed in retrospect. At one point, Monarch shifts his weight, nickers softly, and looks directly at Leo. For a breathless second, there's a connection. A spark that leaps the gap between species. Wordless, but real. Leo doesn't flinch. He meets Monarch's gaze, and for the first time in months, smiles. A quick, uncertain flash, but a smile. All the same. Later, Clara suggests they get lunch at a diner on Main Street. The kind of place where the menu hasn't changed in 20 years. And every booth holds a story. She orders coffee. Leo, a grilled cheese. The waitress, a tall woman with freckles and a braid, recognizes them as the folks filming the horrors. Clara laughs, surprised at how quickly word travels in a small town. The waitress nods knowingly, leans in and says, "That horse, Monarch, he's been out there longer than I've lived here. Some say he's stubborn. Others say he's got a broken heart." She shrugs, as if that explains everything. That evening, as the sky bruises into twilight, Clara and Leo return to their motel room, hearts and heads full of new questions. Clara reviews her footage, watching the way Monarch stands against the wind, the way Leo seems to find pieces of himself in the animal's steady patience. She realizes with a jolt that this isn't just a story about a horse. It's about them, too. About the things we carry and the places we find ourselves stranded, waiting for something or someone to set us free. Before bed, Leo stands at the window, looking out over the parking lot, the horizon just visible beyond the edge of town. "Mom," he says quietly, "do you think Monarch remembers who he's waiting for?" Clara doesn't know the answer, but for the first time in a long while, she's willing to wait and see. The motel's neon sign flickers, casting strange patterns on the wall. In the darkness, Clara makes a silent promise, not just to tell Monarch's story, but to listen. Really listen to the unspoken questions that haunt both horse and boy. And tomorrow, she decides, they'll go back. Tomorrow, they'll start asking the people who've lived here the longest. And maybe, just maybe, they'll find out why loyalty sometimes looks a lot like hope standing still on the side of a lonely road. The sun comes up behind a curtain of thin clouds, painting the Wyoming plains with a hush of silver and gold. Clara wakes before Leo, padding quietly to the motel bathroom, the tiled floor cold under her bare feet. Her mind is already turning, replaying yesterday's encounters. Monarch's unwavering gaze, Leo's rare smile, the sense that they're standing at the edge of something deeper than either of them can name. She pulls her camera bag together, slips her notebook into her jacket, and nudges Leo gently awake. "Come on, sleepyhead. Time to be journalists." Leo groans, then sits up, hair sticking out wildly, but there's no resistance in him. In a way, he's as eager as she is, even if he'd never say it out loud. As they walk to the car, Clara notices the way he checks the sky, like he's hoping for a sign, or perhaps simply for a day that's different from all the ones before. Their first stop is the local diner. Patty, the motel clerk, had mentioned the town's oldest residents gather there every morning for coffee and gossip. Clara figures, if Monarch has become a fixture on the edge of town, someone here will know why. Inside, the scent of bacon and strong coffee wraps around them. The bell above the door jingles. 4 men in battered Stetsons and flannels sit in a booth near the window, talking quietly over their mugs. A woman with steel gray hair sits behind the counter, jotting down notes in a crossword. Clara orders 2 coffees and a cinnamon roll, then approaches the men. "Excuse me, I'm making a documentary about Monarch, the horse by the road. I'm hoping to learn more about him. Do you know his story?" The men exchange glances. One, tall with sunburnt skin and blue eyes, leans forward. "That's the Morgan horse, far as I know," he says, voice rough, but not unkind. "Been out there since before my granddaughter started school." Most folks call him Monarch, but old Tom used to call him, the Watcher. Said the horse had eyes like he'd seen the world come and go. Another man, shorter, shakes his head. "He chased a truck, I remember. Big old U-Haul, heading north, ran after it for miles. That was, what, 10 years back? Never left after that. Just stands out there, day after day. Some say he's too stubborn to move," the third adds with a half smile. "Others say he's waiting. For what? Nobody knows. But he's outlasted 2 mayors, 3 snowstorms, and just about every kid in town's curiosity." Leo listens, wide-eyed. Clara jots notes, her camera already recording low to capture every bit of the exchange. "Do you know who owned him?" she asks. The woman at the counter chimes in, not looking up from her crossword. "He belonged to the Morgan family, not from around here now. But they used to own the last ranch before the ridge. Hard times hit him in the crash. Some place got foreclosed. They loaded up and left, but that horse never did." Clara's pen stutters across the page. The Morgans, that's a real lead, a name, a story, something concrete in a landscape of rumors. "Where did they go?" she asks. The tall man shrugs. "Some say Oregon, some say Idaho. No one really kept track after the bank took the place." Clara feels a familiar prickle in her spine, the feeling she gets when a story shifts from rumor to something tangible. She thanks them, pays for breakfast, and leaves a generous tip. As they step outside, the wind picks up, whipping dust across the parking lot. Leo looks at her, hopeful. "What now?" "Now we find the Morgans," Clara says, determination lighting her voice. "But first, let's go see Monarch. I want to film him in the morning light." They drive out to Monarch's spot, the road nearly empty, except for a battered red pickup that slows as it passes. Monarch stands in his usual place, mane tousled by the wind, eyes half closed but alert. Clara sets up her tripod, capturing the way the light glows along his flank, the almost regal tilt of his head. As she films, a group of local kids ride by on bikes, slowing as they approach the horse. One of them, a girl with pigtails and a Gap hoodie, calls out, "Don't get too close. My dad says Monarch doesn't let anyone touch him." The boys laugh, daring each other to walk closer, but none do. They circle back and pedal away, leaving only footprints and echoes. Clara interviews Leo on camera, framing him with Monarch in the background. "How does he make you feel?" she asks, handing him the mic. Leo hesitates. "He looks lonely," he says, finally, eyes never leaving the horse. "But not sad, like he's waiting for something important." Clara nods, swallowing the lump in her throat. She realizes Leo's talking about more than just Monarch. He's speaking for both of them. Back at the motel, Clara digs through her laptop, hunting for digital traces. She pulls up county records, foreclosure notices, property transfers. The Morgan family's name appears again and again, a string of faded headlines. Local ranch lost in economic downturn. Morgan family relocates after 2013 crisis. She finds a photo in an old newspaper archive. 2 adults, a boy, and a horse, unmistakably Monarch. His white star bright as a badge. She shows the photo to Leo. "That's him," he whispers. "And, that's the boy, right? He looks my age." Clara nods, struck by the similarities. It's not just about a horse, she realizes. It's about the people he waited for. And maybe the people who need him now. As dusk falls, Clara sits on the motel bed, drafting an email to an address she found for the Morgans, now living somewhere in Oregon. She hesitates, unsure how to phrase it. Finally, she types, "Hello, my name is Clara Jennings. I'm a filmmaker passing through your old town in Wyoming. There's a horse here named Monarch. People say he's been waiting by the road for 10 years. Do you remember him?" She hits send before she can second-guess herself. The message flies into the ether, carrying hope and curiosity in equal measure. That night, as wind rattles the windows and Leo sleeps with his arm around a borrowed pillow, Clara feels something shift inside her. She doesn't know what tomorrow will bring. But for the first time in a long time, she believes the answer is worth waiting for. Monarch waits too, bathed in moonlight, head high, as if he alone knows the value of patience. And far away, in a place called Oregon, an email notification pings on a kitchen table, ready to change everything. The following morning, the Wyoming sky is all promise and uncertainty, the sun threading its way through a lattice of low clouds. Clara wakes before the alarm, a bundle of nerves and anticipation. She checks her phone first thing, heart pounding. But there's no reply yet from the Morgan family. Still, the act of reaching out has given her a restless energy, the sense that something is about to change, not just for Monarch, but for her and Leo too. She glances at her son, still curled under a thin motel blanket, and decides to let him sleep a little longer. Clara sips bitter motel coffee, her thoughts drifting through all the loose ends she's uncovered. There's a family out there, somewhere, who may not even realize a piece of their past is still standing guard beside a lonely highway. What would it feel like, she wonders, to know that loyalty waited for you all these years? By 8, she's restlessly pacing. She shakes Leo awake, gently. Let's go to be detectives. He groans, but there's no real complaint. As they step outside, the morning air smells like wet sage and possibility. The world feels bigger than usual. Their first stop is the local library, a squat, red brick building across from the high school, staffed by a single librarian who wears readers on a chain and knows every town secret that's worth knowing. Clara introduces herself, and when she explains what she's after, the librarian's eyes spark with curiosity. We keep all the local papers on microfilm, she says, and if you want property records, the county office is next door. I remember that family. Everyone does. Clara and Leo settle into a back corner, sunlight angling through the dusty windows, and begin to scroll through reels of old newsprint. Headlines flicker by. Rancher honored at county fair. Local family faces foreclosure. Morgan Ranch sold to developers. They find photos, grainy but evocative. A proud man in a cowboy hat. A woman holding a pie at a bake sale. A young boy grinning atop a chestnut Mustang with a white star on its forehead. Monarch, unmistakably, long before he became a legend at the edge of town. As they dig deeper, a fuller story emerges. The Morgans had run cattle for 3 generations, respected by all, but felled by the tidal wave of the 2013 foreclosure crisis. When the bank came, the family fought to stay, but lost. As the ranch was auctioned off to a developer who never finished the promised subdivision, leaving the land mostly empty, just a patchwork of weedy lots and a single rusted swing set that creaks in the wind, the Morgans, it seems, left everything behind, everything except Monarch. They trace county records, Clara typing, Leo reading aloud, sometimes stumbling over legal jargon, the final deed of sale lists an Oregon address. That's it, Clara whispers, pointing to the printout. That's where they went. As she copies down the address, her phone buzzes. She almost drops it. It's an email, subject line, Monarch. Hands trembling, she clicks it open. Dear Miss Jennings, we are stunned. Yes, we remember Monarch. He was our Leo's horse. We left him with neighbors, thinking it was for the best. We never imagined he'd still be there. Please, tell us everything, sincerely, Martha Morgan. Clara reads it twice before handing the phone to Leo. He scans it, eyes wide. The boy's name is Leo, he whispers, as if afraid saying it out loud might scare the truth away. For a moment, Clara just sits there, stunned by the symmetry of it all. The boy in the old photos, the boy beside her, and the horse waiting year after year. Without hesitating, Clara replies, her words tumbling over themselves. Monarch is still here. He stands by the road every day. The whole town knows him. Would you or your son want to come back? I'd be honored to film it. She hits send and leans back in her chair, letting out a breath she didn't know she was holding. The library feels different now, charged with the weight of everything about to unfold. The rest of the day blurs as she and Leo trace Monarch's footprints through the stories of those who stayed behind. They stop by the county office, asking about the land, the failed development, the local ordinances that somehow kept Monarch from being rounded up or moved. An old clerk with stooped shoulders remembers Monarch well. "There was always something about that horse," he says, pulling out a dusty folder. "Sheriff tried to catch him once, but he slipped the rope every time. Folks just started calling him the Watcher. He didn't cause trouble, so we let him be." Clara scribbles in her notebook. Leo sketches Monarch's silhouette in the margin of a newspaper clipping. Together, they drive out to the patch of land where the Morgan Ranch once stood, now little more than a tangle of wild grass and broken fence. Monarch isn't there. He prefers his post by the road, but Leo gets out and walks the boundary, boots crunching in the gravel, pausing by a collapsed barn. Clara films it all, her camera capturing the wind as it combs the empty spaces, the way Leo stands with his hands in his pockets. Silent, but not as lost as before. Back in town, the news of Clara's investigation starts to spread. At the diner, people ask questions. Patty from the motel brings over a slice of pie, sitting with them to share her own memory of the Morgans. How Mrs. Morgan once organized the town's 4th of July picnic. How little Leo rode Monarch in the parade. How the whole town mourned when the family left. "We all thought Monarch would wander off," Patty says, voice low. "But he stayed. I think he was waiting for home to come back to him." Evening creeps in, turning the sky lavender and orange. Clara and Leo return to Monarch's stretch of highway, hoping for a glimpse of something different. Monarch is there, as always, but tonight he stands facing the west, watching the sun sink behind the ridge. Clara records a few last shots, her heart thrumming with anticipation. She wonders if Monarch senses that change is coming, if he can smell the scent of old friends on the wind, even from 1,000 miles away. As they drive back to the motel, Clara feels the story sharpening around her. It isn't just about a horse anymore, or even the family who lost him. It's about all the things we leave behind, willingly or not, and the faith that something might still be waiting for us if we're brave enough to return. Back in the room, Leo turns off the light, but leaves the curtains open. The last thing Clara sees before sleep claims her is Monarch's silhouette, sturdy and unwavering, framed against the coming night. And somewhere in Oregon, the Morgans pack hurried bags, hearts pounding, breathless with hope and fear. Monarch's story is about to come full circle. By the time dawn drapes its pale gold across the Wyoming plains, Clara and Leo are already awake. Clara because she's wired with anticipation. Leo because some part of him senses something big is about to happen. The motel room is cluttered with camera gear, notebooks, old printouts, and half-finished sketches of Monarch in Leo's hand. Clara's phone buzzes. A new message from Martha Morgan. The subject line is simple as it is momentous. "We're coming? Yeah, tomorrow." For the rest of the day, time moves with an odd slowness, each minute stretched by expectation. Clara films Monarch in the wind, catches snippets of locals, kids on bikes, the diner waitress, ranch hands, offering their thoughts, their memories, their own private theories about why a horse would wait so long for a family that's gone. The story has started to spread. Clara's inbox is filling with curious questions from her producer and heartfelt comments from the early followers of her social media posts. The town feels electric, like everyone's holding their breath. That afternoon, Leo stands with Clara on Monarch's familiar roadside patch. Monarch is there, chestnut coat glinting in the sun, that white star shining almost defiantly. Leo doesn't try to approach or touch him. He just stands, quiet, letting the silence wrap around them both. For a moment, Clara thinks she can see something shift in Monarch's posture. A pricking of his ears, a subtle change in the way he holds his head. She wonders if the horse knows, if, somehow, he can sense what's coming. The next morning is bright and cool, Wyoming at its best, and Clara sets up her camera at sunrise, trying to capture every nuance. The sun burning the mist off the grass, Monarch tossing his mane as if to shake loose a decade of waiting. Her hands are steady, but her heart is racing. She keeps checking her phone for updates. They should be here before noon, Martha's last message said. Leo is beside himself. He barely slept. Just before 11, a white SUV pulls onto the shoulder, dust billowing up behind it. Clara stands, her camera already rolling, as a man and woman step out. John and Martha Morgan, older than in the faded newspaper clippings, faces lined by worry and hope. And then, almost hesitantly, another young man unfolds himself from the back seat. Tall, broad-shouldered, and unmistakably the boy from the old photo, now grown. Leo Morgan, age 21. His hair a little longer. His posture stiff with nerves. For a moment, the Morgans just stand by the car, staring at Monarch. Tears track down Martha's cheeks. John's hands tremble. But it's the young man, Leo, who draws the scene into focus. He walks forward, slowly, each step uncertain, as if he's crossing more than just a patch of grass. Monarch watches, body taut with alertness, tail flicking, nostrils flaring at the scent of something familiar. Clara holds her breath, her camera lens catching every second. Leo Morgan stops just a few feet from Monarch, his voice cracking when he finally speaks. "Hey, boy," he whispers. "It's me. I'm back." For a heartbeat, Monarch doesn't move. Then, as if waking from a 10-year dream, the horse takes a single step forward. Another. His eyes are wide, searching. He lowers his head, coming closer, then presses his face gently into Leo's chest. The world goes silent except for the sound of wind and someone's quiet sob, the kind of moment that knits together all the broken pieces of the past. Clara's hands are shaking, and she's grateful for the stabilizer on her camera. She catches Martha hugging John, both of them crying openly, and the smaller Leo, her own son, standing off to one side. Eyes huge, face alight with wonder. For months, she's struggled to reach him, to connect with his grief. But right now, she sees something in his expression that's new. Hope, maybe. Or the realization that healing sometimes looks like a chestnut horse pressing its nose into the boy who loved him. The reunion is wordless for a long time. Monarch stays close, eyes half shut, breathing deep in Leo Morgan's arms. Finally, the young man laughs, awkward and teary, and wipes his face. "I can't believe you waited, old boy. I can't believe it." Martha kneels next to Monarch, running her hands through his mane. "He never forgot us," she murmurs, "even when we couldn't come back." John stands beside her, reaching out with a hand that trembles less now, his voice thick with gratitude and regret. "We thought we were doing the right thing, leaving him behind. We thought he'd be safer here. I never thought he'd wait." Monarch breathes, soft and rhythmic, eyes closing as if in relief. The onlookers, locals who've gathered quietly at a respectful distance, don't cheer or make a fuss. They simply watch, reverent as the town's living legend comes home, if only for a moment. Clara turns the camera toward her own son. Leo is crying too, silent tears streaking his cheeks, but he doesn't hide them. Instead, he walks over and stands next to Monarch and the older Leo, reaching out with one hand. Monarch turns, nuzzling him gently, accepting him as part of this strange, stitched-together family. For the first time, Clara feels a deep, aching hope that the wound left by her husband's death might, someday, start to close. The rest of the day unfolds like a miracle that no one wants to end. Clara interviews the Morgans beneath a wide blue sky. They tell stories of Monarch as a foal, how he would run circles around Leo, how he'd follow the boy everywhere, how he once dragged a broken gate through half the pasture just to get closer to the house. Leo Morgan describes the heartbreak of leaving, the guilt that haunted him, the hope he never dared to speak that maybe, somehow, Monarch was still out there, waiting. There's laughter, too, and shared memories. The Morgans thank the town, the neighbors who watched out for Monarch, the kids who kept their distance but always looked out for him. Clara's younger Leo helps carry water and apples from the car, beaming when Monarch eats from his hand. As afternoon fades toward evening, Monarch lies down in the grass for the first time all day, flanked by both Leos, one grown, one just a boy. Clara's camera keeps rolling, but now she's not thinking about viral clips or documentary credits. She's simply grateful to bear witness to something rare. The moment a wound is mended, the past forgiven, and the long vigil of hope at last rewarded. That night, in the motel room, Clara reviews her footage in silence. Leo sits beside her, quietly tracing Monarch's white star in his notebook. "Did you see the way he looked at Leo?" he asked softly, like he knew all along. Clara nods, blinking away tears, her heart full of something she hasn't felt in months, the certainty that some bonds, once forged, never truly break. Outside, under a Wyoming sky brimming with stars, Monarch grazes with his family nearby, no longer just the watcher by the road, but, at long last, a horse who waited, and whose waiting has finally come to an end. Let me know if you'd like to continue, straight into part 6. The sun barely crests the horizon before Clara is up, reviewing footage from yesterday's extraordinary reunion. She replays the moment Monarch pressed his face into Leo Morgan's chest, over and over, pausing to study the tremor in the boy's hands, the way the horse closed his eyes, surrendering to memory and relief. Every time, Clara feels her own heart catch in her throat. This is more than a documentary now. This is a story that demands to be shared, not just with the Morgans, not just with the town, but with the world. Clara's first edit is raw, urgent. There she overlays her quiet narration. 10 years, that's how long he waited. Through blizzards and drought, through the indifference of passing strangers, through the slow creep of years that erase most memories. But Monarch never forgot. She posts the clip on social media. Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. She shares it with her producer and adds a brief caption. "A horse waits by a Wyoming road for 10 years. Yesterday, his boy came home." She's not prepared for what happens next. By noon, her phone buzzes nonstop. The video racks up tens of thousands of views in hours, then hundreds of thousands. Comments flood in. People move to tears, people sharing their own stories of lost pets found again, of loyalty rewarded against the odds. Local news stations pick up the story. National outlets call for interviews. Monarch, the silent watcher of a forgotten road, becomes a symbol of devotion, hope, and the possibility that, even in a world always rushing forward, some things are worth waiting for. Clara is swept up in the storm. She films follow-up interviews with the Morgans, capturing Leo's shy, stunned amazement at the attention. "I never thought anyone would care about our horse," he says, shaking his head, voice trembling with humility. "I just wanted to see him again." His words are broadcast on the evening news, and the video of Monarch's reunion becomes a lead segment on major networks. Hashtags trend. #waiting for Leo. #Monarch the Mustang. #loyalty never forgets. The town, once quiet and anonymous, comes alive. Kids start painting murals of Monarch on abandoned buildings. School teachers assign essays about patience and loyalty, and the small library hosts a Monarch-themed art contest. The local mayor announces a Monarch Day festival, and stores put up signs. "Home of Monarch, the waiting horse." Ranchers who once scoffed at the horse's stubbornness now bring apples and carrots. Strangers drive hours just to see the famous Mustang, standing calm as ever in his field, no longer quite so alone. Clara's son Leo, too, is changed. He wakes early to help with chores at the temporary paddock set up for Monarch behind the motel. He brushes the Mustang's mane, learning to hold the brush just so, the way the older Leo shows him. He carries buckets of water, giggles as Monarch nudges his shoulder, and starts to talk more about Monarch, about the other Leo, about how sometimes it hurts to remember, and sometimes it hurts even more to forget. Moved by the attention and the generosity of the townspeople, the Morgans decide to stay longer than planned. They talk with Clara about Monarch's future, where he should live, who should care for him, how to protect him from the sudden crush of curiosity seekers. The local school puts together a fundraiser, and the town council votes to set aside land for a Mustang sanctuary, a safe haven for Monarch and other wild horses displaced by development and drought. Clara's camera follows every step, the committee meetings in the school gym, kids painting fences, or ranch hands hauling lumber and feed. She interviews teachers, elders, and children, capturing the groundswell of community spirit, Monarch's story has inspired. I used to think the world was too busy to care, one teacher tells her, but that horse reminded us, sometimes you have to stand still long enough for people to catch up. The story ripples far beyond Wyoming. Donations pour in from across the country. Small bills from school kids, big checks from animal lovers and philanthropists. Letters arrive by the sackful. Drawings of Monarch, poems about loyalty, handwritten notes from people who find in his story the hope they'd lost in their own lives. Monarch becomes a living legend, a symbol of devotion and the quiet power of steadfast love. Clara is asked to speak at the Monarch Day Festival, standing under a handmade banner as hundreds gather around the paddock. "We came here searching for answers," she tells the crowd. "Instead, we found a story that belongs to all of us. A story about waiting, about loss, about the ways love can outlast even the hardest years." The applause is warm, but what matters most is the feeling in the air. For the first time in years, hope seems possible, tangible, as something you could reach out and touch. At the end of the week, the Morgans stand with Clara and her son at the sanctuary's edge. Monarch grazes nearby, unconcerned by the attention. Leo Morgan lays a hand on the Mustang's flank, his eyes bright. "He waited for me," he says, voice thick. Now maybe he can help others, too. Inspired, Clara launches a short documentary project, rallying the town to help. She encourages everyone to record their stories about Monarch, about the family he waited for, about their own memories of waiting and being found. She plans screenings at the school, at the library, at festivals and community centers across the state. One afternoon, Clara finds her son in the field, reading aloud to Monarch while the wind tugs at the pages of his book. She watches for a while before joining him, the ache in her heart softer than before. They sit together in the grass, sharing a story with a horse who knows, better than anyone, what it means to wait and to hope. By the time the sun sinks behind the Wyoming ridge, Monarch is more than a roadside mystery. He is a movement, a living reminder that sometimes, when we stop and truly listen, we find the world is full of stories just waiting to be told. With Monarch's story rippling across the country and a new sense of hope settling over the small Wyoming town, the Morgans linger longer than they ever expected. Every morning, Leo Morgan is up at dawn, pulling on boots and walking out to the paddock behind the motel, where Monarch waits with the same unhurried patience that made him a legend. He brushes the Mustang's coat, whispers stories into his ear, and sometimes just sits in the grass, feeling the presence of a friend who never left, even when the world turned upside down. But for the Morgans, being here is bittersweet. The land that once belonged to them, the ridge that carried their name for 3 generations, now lies tangled with weeds, its old fences rusted and broken. And developers own the deed, but the promised luxury homes never materialized. Instead, the old ranch stands as a testament to loss and missed chances, visible from Monarch's favorite patch of roadside. John Morgan spends his afternoons staring at that ridge, talking with Clara and Martha about what it would mean to reclaim even a small part of what they lost. The town is swept up in the movement Monarch inspired. Donations keep coming, not just for the Mustang Sanctuary, but for the hope of restoring a piece of the Morgan family ranch. Local businesses hold bake sales and silent auctions. School kids bring jars of coins and drawings of Monarch. Clara documents everything: the meetings at the town hall, the excitement and nerves as neighbors come together, the way everyone seems changed by the Mustang's endurance. She interviews ranchers who once saw Monarch as just another stray. Now they shake Leo's hand, telling him how the horse's story reminded them of their own lost animals, lost homes, lost time. One evening, as the sun lowers behind the ridge, Clara's son Leo joins the Morgans and a handful of volunteers to survey the old property. The wind whips their hair as they tramp through knee-high grass, pointing out the foundation stones of the original barn, the gnarled apple tree where Monarch once sheltered from storms. "If we could buy just this corner back," Martha muses, her voice tinged with longing, "maybe Monarch could come home for good." Inspired by the outpouring of support, Clara launches a crowdfunding campaign to buy back a small parcel of the old ranch. The story goes viral again, news outlets picking up the tale of a town and a family united by a horse's steadfast heart. Within a week, the donations reach their goal. The developer, moved by the story and the national attention, agrees to sell the corner pasture at a fraction of its value. The town celebrates, honking horns, baking cakes, even a parade where Monarch himself is led through Main Street to cheers and applause. The next day, the real work begins. Townsfolk gather with tools and fencing, repairing the old boundaries and clearing out thistles. Clara's son, Leo, volunteers every afternoon, learning to mend fence posts, drive nails, and care for the sanctuary's growing herd. There's laughter and sweat, and the kind of camaraderie that comes only from shared labor and a common dream. Clara records it all. A teacher hauling hay, 2 kids painting a wooden sign that reads, Monarch's Field. The mayor wielding a shovel with surprising skill. Monarch, meanwhile, splits his time between his new sanctuary and the reclaimed pasture. Each morning, Leo Morgan opens the gate, and Monarch trots, yes, trots, straight to the ridge, pausing at the crest to gaze over the land as if he's remembering every inch. Sometimes Leo follows, sitting beside him, talking about the years apart, about the guilt and the longing and the impossible joy of being together again. Sometimes Clara's Leo tags along too, his shyness fading with every visit. The sanctuary itself begins to grow. A pair of rescued mustangs arrive, joining Monarch in the fields. Volunteers come from out of state, college students on summer break, retired cowboys, even a celebrity or two. They help build a barn, plant wildflowers, and set up a walking path where visitors can observe the horses without disturbing them. Clara organizes educational tours for local schools, filming kids as they listen wide-eyed to stories about wild horses and second chances. As the days grow warmer, the town's connection to Monarch and to each other deepens. On weekends, families picnic by the sanctuary. Artists paint murals. One, a sweeping panorama of Monarch, waiting at the roadside, mane blowing in the wind. Another, Leo Morgan embracing his old friend beneath the Wyoming sky. Local musicians write songs about the Mustang who waited, performing them at open-air concerts and the Monarch Day Festival. Even those who never cared much for horses feel pride swelling in their chests. Through it all, Clara's documentary project evolves. What started as a story about loss and loyalty becomes a chronicle of renewal. She captures the way the Morgans reclaim not just land, but dignity. The way Martha's laughter returns, the way John's step grows lighter, the way Leo Morgan starts planning a future where Monarch is never left behind again. She films the younger Leo's transformation too, the boy who wouldn't speak now chattering about grooming and hoof care, making friends among the other volunteers. On the first night the reclaimed pasture is officially theirs, the town gathers for a bonfire under the stars. Clara films the faces illuminated by firelight, hopeful, weary, grateful. Monarch stands on the ridge, silhouetted against the moon, tail flicking as if acknowledging the cheers and laughter. Leo Morgan steps forward, voice strong. Thank you. Not just for Monarch, but for giving us our home back. There are tears, there is laughter, and above all, there is a sense that the town has been healed just a little by the persistence of one loyal Mustang. Monarch, once the watcher by the road, now stands as a symbol of what can be reclaimed when a community chooses hope over forgetting. As the night deepens, Clara stands by the fence with her son, both of them watching Monarch graze. He waited for 10 years, Leo whispers, and now he's finally home. Clara hugs him, blinking back tears, knowing that for the first time in a long while, she believes it too. For weeks, Monarch thrives in his new home, splitting his days between the wide sanctuary fields and the reclaimed patch of Morganland that feels, once again, like home. He gallops along the ridge, mane streaming in the sun, flanked sometimes by the 2 new rescued mustangs, and watched always by the townspeople who now regard him as part miracle, part family. Clara's documentary captures every moment, the quiet joy on Leo Morgan's face as he teaches the younger Leo how to brush Monarch's coat, the laughter that bubbles up as Monarch playfully chases the ranch dog, the deep calm that settles whenever the horse stands, eyes closed, breathing in the wind. The town's spirit soars, And, for a while, everything feels possible. The old wounds are healing. People linger after chores just to watch the horses. Parents bring children to lay wildflowers at Monarch's fence, and strangers from far away still come just to glimpse the horse who waited so long. Leo Morgan, newly hopeful, starts talking about the future. A permanent Mustang sanctuary, maybe? Or even an annual festival that will keep the story alive. But the world, as always, has other plans. One gray dawn, just as summer's edge is tipping into autumn, Clara's son, Leo, is the first to notice something's off. He brings Monarch his favorite treat, slices of apple, and waits, but the horse stays at the far end of the field, head low, one leg held gingerly off the ground. Leo calls to him and Monarch lifts his head, but instead of trotting over with his usual energy, he limps, slow and careful. Every step a struggle. Clara arrives with her camera, heart sinking as soon as she sees Monarch's gait. She calls for Leo Morgan, who rushes from the barn. The whole family gathers, along with a few volunteers and townsfolk who sense trouble, the way prairie folk always do. Neef, Monarch tries to nuzzle Leo Morgan, his breath warm and steady, but there's pain in his eyes. Pain he can't hide, even for his boy. The local vet, a middle-aged woman with steady hands and a deep love for horses, comes quickly. She examines Monarch as everyone watches, silent, holding their breath. She kneels beside his injured leg, her brow furrowing as she feels for swelling, tests his hoof, murmurs gentle words only Monarch seems to understand. After a long, tense pause, she stands. He's pulled something badly. He's older than he looks, and sometimes injuries like this. Her voice trails off, but her eyes say what her words do not. Monarch might not make it. The news travels fast. By evening, Clara's phone is flooded again, not with celebration this time, but with messages of worry and support. She posts a simple update. Monarch is hurt. The vet is doing all she can. He needs us now more than ever. The community's response is immediate and overwhelming. Kids bring get well cards and hand-drawn pictures to hang on the sanctuary fence. Local ranchers offer hay, blankets, anything they can spare. A retired cowboy drives in from 3 towns over just to sit by Monarch's pen, singing low cowboy songs into the dusk. That night, a steady trickle of people, some familiar, some strangers, set up camp outside the sanctuary fence. Lanterns glow softly in the grass as people whisper prayers and swap Monarch stories under the stars. Clara's son Leo sleeps bundled in a sleeping bag near the gate, unwilling to leave Monarch's side. Inside the barn, Leo Morgan spends the night on a cot, holding Monarch's massive head in his lap, whispering the same stories he told when he was a boy. Stories of summer storms, long rides, and dreams of coming home. Clara documents every moment. The tension is different now, raw and uncertain. She films Monarch's labored breaths, the gentle hands that brush his mane, the way the whole town seems to wait and worry together. The world that once cheered for Monarch now holds its breath, hoping for a different kind of miracle. For days, Monarch hardly moves. The vet visits morning and night, bringing poultices and painkillers, but Monarch grows weaker, refusing food and water. Leo Morgan won't leave his side. Clara's son cries quietly when he thinks no one can hear him. Martha and John Morgan pray, their hands clasped tight. Sometimes, townsfolk just stand together in silence at the fence, not knowing what else to do. On the 5th night, the wind shifts. Clouds scud across the sky, and a light rain begins to fall. At dawn, Monarch stirs. He lifts his head, nostrils flaring, and struggles once, twice, to his feet. For a heartbeat, everyone fears he'll fall, but Monarch plants his hooves and takes a single, halting step toward the fence. The crowd outside goes silent. Clara, her camera forgotten, runs forward. Leo Morgan helps steady the Mustang, tears streaming down his face. Monarch breathes deep, stretching his neck to the sunrise, and for a moment it seems as if every sorrow has lifted from his shoulders. Leo Morgan wraps his arms around Monarch's neck. Easy, old friend. We're here. We're all here. The sanctuary is full of people, of hope, of the simple, impossible courage it takes to rise when you've already waited longer than anyone thought possible. The vet wipes her eyes. smiling through tears. He's not out of the woods yet, but he's got a chance. Sometimes love does more than medicine ever could. The news spreads as quickly as the worry once did. People come from miles away to celebrate. Monarch takes a few more slow steps each day, watched over by the whole town. Letters and drawings line the fences. Someone strings up prayer flags in the colors of the Wyoming sunrise. For every moment of fear, there's twice as much hope. At sunset, Clara films Leo Morgan and her son standing together, hands on Monarch's withers, their faces lit by gold. "He's still with us," Clara says quietly into the camera, "and as long as we have hope, we're not done waiting with him." In the hush of evening, with the prairie wide and quiet, Monarch rests, surrounded not by loneliness, but by a community that has learned, from one horse, the art of holding on. Monarch's slow recovery becomes more than just a personal journey for the Morgans and the town. It turns into a living testament to the power of hope, community, and the enduring bonds between people and the animals who share their lives. In the weeks after Monarch's illness, the air is thick with anticipation and cautious optimism. Each small improvement, a few extra steps, a little more appetite, a spark in the old Mustang's eye, feels like a hard-won miracle. Clara is everywhere with her camera, but the lens seems almost secondary now. The story has seeped into every corner of her life. Her days are a swirl of filming, helping at the sanctuary, and answering hundreds of emails from people moved by Monarch's journey. Each evening she edits footage in her motel room, her son Leo curled beside her, often drifting off to sleep as she overlays narration on scenes of Monarch nuzzling a new foal or grazing in the windswept pasture. Sometimes Leo wakes in the night, sits up and asks, "Do you think he'll be here in the morning?" And every time, Clara hugs him close and whispers, "He's not going anywhere without us." When Monarch takes his first strong walk out into the sanctuary field, mane flickering in the wind, tail high, moving slowly but steadily, a crowd gathers to watch. Children cheer, ranchers tip their hats, and Martha Morgan cries openly, holding John's hand in one of hers and a crumpled tissue in the other. Leo Morgan walks beside Monarch, talking softly, as if the Mustang can understand every word. Clara's son skips along, scattering wildflowers in their path, beaming at the thought that hope, once so fragile, has begun to bloom. The story spreads even further now. Clara's original short documentary is picked up by a regional film festival and wins a national grant, money that she immediately pours back into the Sanctuary Project. She works with the Morgans, the town, and animal advocates from across the state to turn the sanctuary into something bigger, a living classroom, and a place for healing, not just for horses, but for people, too. They launch a program for grieving families and at-risk teens, kids who, like Monarch, have waited too long for someone to notice their pain. The sanctuary becomes a safe place for them to learn to care for animals, to work with their hands, to heal at their own pace. On a warm Saturday in late spring, the first group of teens arrives at the sanctuary. They are shy and defensive at first, shoulders hunched, hands jammed into pockets. But when Leo Morgan and Clara's son introduce them to Monarch, showing them how to brush his mane, how to speak gently and move slowly, the walls begin to drop. One girl with angry eyes and a jagged haircut weeps silently as Monarch nuzzles her hand. A boy who hasn't spoken since his father died sits for hours in the grass, simply watching the horses graze. Clara films it all, sometimes from behind a tree or a patch of tall grass, careful not to intrude. She records quiet conversations, laughter, and the steady rhythm of hoofbeats on soft earth. At night, she edits the footage for a new documentary, one focused not on the past, but on the future Monarch has inspired. One morning, a new foal is born at the sanctuary, a spirited little filly with a white blaze on her forehead, strong and wild from the start. The whole community gathers to celebrate. Martha and John Morgan bring lemonade and cake. The kids from the sanctuary program take turns suggesting names. In the end, they vote to call her Hope. Monarch, aging but alert, watches over her with a gentle pride, nudging her along as she learns to run. In an interview for her documentary, Clara asks Leo Morgan what Monarch means to him now. Leo gazes out over the green field, his hand resting on Monarch's broad back. "He's not just waiting anymore," Leo says. "He's leading. He brought all of us together. He showed us what it means to not give up, even when you're left behind." The foal, Hope, gallops in circles, Monarch watching her every move. Clara's son laughs, chasing after them, no longer the withdrawn boy who once wouldn't speak. Even Clara feels herself changing. The old ache, the one that came after losing her husband, has softened. She's no longer wandering, lost on endless roads. She's found purpose here, in this unlikely herd, in this little corner of Wyoming, reborn through the loyalty of a horse. And the documentary premieres at the regional festival to a packed auditorium. When the final scene, Monarch, rising after his illness, standing proud on the ridge, with Hope at his side, fades into the credits, the crowd erupts in applause. People wipe away tears, stand to clap, and afterward line up to share their own stories of healing and hope. National funders pledge to expand the sanctuary's programs. A well-known therapist from Denver offers to volunteer her services for grieving families. Clara realizes, as she stands on the stage with the Morgans and the two Leos, that Monarch's waiting has changed more lives than they could ever have imagined. Back home, the sanctuary fills with new faces. Kids, families, wild horses, and those simply seeking the kind of quiet peace that can only be found where wind and grass and memory meet. Monarch, no longer alone, stands on the ridge at sunset, mane tangled with wildflowers, his gaze sweeping the land he waited for and the new generation he now leads. He's a legend, Clara says softly, recording her last piece of narration as the sun dips behind the hills. Not just for waiting, but for teaching us that the ones who stand still, who endure and remember, are sometimes the ones who change the world. And as dusk falls over the sanctuary, laughter and hoofbeats echo through the fields, the living legacy of a horse who turned waiting into belonging and loss into love. There is a kind of golden hour that happens only in Wyoming, when the sun drapes the ridge in soft amber, and the wind hums through the grass like an old lullaby. On the day that Monarch's story comes full circle, as Clara finds herself walking the ridge with both Leos, her own son, and Leo Morgan, and the entire Morgan family. The fields are dotted with wildflowers, their colors deepened by dusk. Children chase each other in the distance, their laughter mixing with the gentle sounds of horses grazing nearby. Monarch stands at the top of the hill, just as he did a decade ago, his mane rippling in the breeze, eyes sharp and gentle. At his side, Hope, the foal, now growing sturdy and adventurous, sticks close, shadowing Monarch's every movement. The sanctuary is alive with the kind of peace only earned after long seasons of waiting and struggle. Clara films the moment from every angle, her lens capturing the small details, the way Leo Morgan's hand rests on Monarch's withers, the proud tears shining in Martha's eyes, the way her own son, once so lost in his silence, is now running and laughing with the other children. John Morgan and a few townspeople have brought picnic blankets and lemonade. There is a sense that everyone present understands how precious this moment is, how rare to see. A story resolve with such grace. They gather at the top of the ridge, where the grass bends in the wind and the mountains blush in the last light. Leo Morgan stands beside Monarch, quiet for a long moment, then turns to Clara and her son. "I spent years thinking I'd never see this horse again," he says, his voice steady, and even longer, feeling like I'd let him down. "But Monarch waited for me. He forgave me. And he taught me that home isn't a place you hold on to. It's something you build every day, with the people and animals who never stop believing in you." Clara's son, once so unsure of his place in the world, slips his hand into hers. "I think Monarch waited for all of us," he whispers. Clara squeezes his fingers, her heart swelling with pride and gratitude. She remembers the first day they found the horse by the road, the hush of the prairie, the sense of something unfinished, and realizes how far they've come. The journey she sees now was never just about Monarch's vigil. It was about every person he drew into his circle, every life that changed because he refused to give up. The sun slips lower, painting Monarch's chestnut coat with fire. Hope dances in the tall grass, watched by the older horses and the whole community. Someone starts singing softly, an old cowboy ballad that drifts across the field. Martha Morgan wipes her eyes and laughs. "He's more than a horse now," she says. "He's the soul of this place." Clara lowers her camera. She wants to remember every sound, every face, every glimmer of light on the ridge. She feels the urge to speak and finds herself sharing what's in her heart. 10 years ago, a horse waited on this hill for the boy he loved. Today, he waits for the world to notice what loyalty really looks like. Monarch's story isn't just about patience or endurance. It's about how the smallest act of love, the quietest act of hope, can change everything. Sometimes the loudest stories are the ones we almost missed, just waiting for us to stop and listen. The group falls quiet. In the hush, Monarch stands tall beside the foal, his presence calm and certain. As dusk settles, families pack up their blankets, and the town drifts back toward home. But no one wants to be the first to leave. They linger on the ridge, reluctant to break the spell. Some snap photos, others simply stand and take in the view, the sun setting behind the mountains. Monarch and Hope side by side. The field's alive with the promise of tomorrow. Clara stays until the last light, slips away. The camera packed up, but her memory's vivid. She walks back with her son, Leo, who's quiet, but smiling. "Will Monarch still be here next year?" he asks. Clara hugs him close, watching the stars blink into life above the prairie. "I think Monarch will always be here, in one way or another. He's a part of this place. And now, we are too." As they drive away, Clara glances in the rearview mirror one last time. Monarch stands on the ridge, mane lifted by the wind, watching over the land he waited for, and the people who came back. His patience has given birth to a sanctuary, to a movement, to hope where there was once only longing. At home, Clara edits her final scenes, her voice steady as she records the closing narration. Loyalty doesn't fade. It waits. Some stories aren't loud. They stand still until someone finally listens. When we pause long enough to see the ones who never stopped waiting, we remember what home means. As the credits roll over images of Monarch and Hope, Clara leaves viewers with a simple invitation. Like, if you believe animals remember more than we realize, share if you've ever been touched by a bond that never broke. Subscribe for more true stories where healing rides in on 4 hooves. And in the sanctuary, long after the last visitor is gone, Monarch and Hope stand together on the ridge, bathed in moonlight and the memory of everything they waited for finally coming home.